The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, its crystal fragments catching the dim light of our bedroom like broken promises. My hands trembled as I stared at my reflection in the vanity mirror, bruised ribs hidden beneath my silk evening dress, a forced smile painted across my lips with crimson lipstick. Tonight was supposed to be our triumph. The annual company gala where Camden would receive his promotion, where we'd celebrate another year of success. Instead, it became the night my world crumbled and my husband revealed his true colors in front of everyone who mattered. But what Camden didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the woman he humiliated tonight wasn't just his wife. I was the silent owner of everything he thought belonged to him. Every dollar in his account, every brick of the company building, every thread of the life he'd built on lies. As I touched the tender spot on my ribs where his shoe had connected, a cold smile spread across my face. Camden Tatum had no idea what was coming for him. The real show was about to begin. My name is Vicky, and until 6 months ago I believed I was living a fairy tale. Camden swept into my life 3 years ago like a hurricane of charm and ambition. He was everything I thought I wanted: handsome, confident, driven. He spoke of dreams and futures with such passion that I found myself caught in his web of promises. What he didn't know was that I came from money. Real money. Old family wealth that I'd inherited from my grandmother, carefully invested and multiplied over the years. When Camden proposed his business venture, I saw it as our chance to build something together. I funded everything: the startup capital, the office space, the equipment. But I did it through shell companies and silent partnerships, wanting him to feel like the man, the provider, the success story. I was such a fool. The morning of the gala, I stood in our kitchen making Camden's favorite breakfast: blueberry pancakes with real maple syrup, the expensive kind he loved. Sunlight streamed through our floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the marble countertops I'd paid for, the custom cabinets that bore his initial, the life I'd built around his ego. "Morning, beautiful," Camden said, sliding his arms around my waist from behind. His cologne was different today, more expensive, musky. The same scent I'd noticed on his shirts lately. "Good morning, honey," I replied, leaning into his embrace despite the nagging feeling in my chest. "Ready for your big night?" He spun me around, his green eyes sparkling with excitement. "Are you kidding? I've been ready for this promotion for months. Bentley says the board is impressed with my quarterly numbers. Zayden thinks they might even give me a bigger office." I smiled, hiding the bitter truth. There was no board. There were no quarterly numbers that mattered beyond what I allowed. Camden's 3 best friends, Bentley, Zayden, and Messiah, worked as mid-level managers in various departments, feeding his ego with half-truths and office gossip. They had no idea their friend's success was built on his wife's hidden fortune. "I'm so proud of you," I lied, serving him the pancakes. "You've worked so hard for this." Camden's phone buzzed. His face lit up as he read the message, and I caught a glimpse of the sender name: Jasmine. My stomach twisted, but I said nothing. I'd been ignoring the signs for weeks. The late meetings, the mysterious phone calls, the way he'd started working out and buying new clothes. "Who's that?" I asked casually, refilling his coffee. "Just someone from the office. Nothing important." He pocketed the phone quickly. "Hey, you're wearing the blue dress tonight, right? The one that shows off your figure." I nodded, though his request made my skin crawl. He wanted me to look good for his colleagues, to be the perfect trophy wife who complimented his success. If only he knew that every success he claimed was paid for with my money. The day dragged on with preparations. I got my hair done at the salon, my nails painted the perfect shade of nude, my makeup applied by a professional who charged more per hour than most people made in a day. All of it charged to accounts funded by my inheritance, though Camden believed it came from his hard-earned salary. As evening approached, I slipped into the midnight blue dress he'd requested. It hugged my curves perfectly, the silk sliding against my skin like a second layer. Diamond earrings, a gift from my grandmother, caught the light as I turned in the mirror. I looked like success, like wealth, like everything Camden wanted to project to the world. But inside I felt hollow. The limousine arrived at 7 sharp. Camden looked stunning in his custom tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his smile confident and bright. He helped me into the car with theatrical gallantry, playing the role of the devoted husband. "You look incredible," he whispered in my ear as the limo pulled away from our house. Our house that I owned completely, though his name was on the deed as a romantic gesture I now regretted. "Thank you," I replied, watching the city lights blur past the window. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The grand ballroom at the Meridian Hotel was decorated in gold and black, elegant and sophisticated. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in white linen. The company's logo, Camden's Company as everyone believed, was displayed prominently on screens around the room. I recognized most of the faces. Employees I'd technically hired through intermediaries, managers whose salaries I ultimately paid, executives who reported to a board that reported to shell companies that reported to me. They all saw Camden as their leader, their visionary CEO who'd built something remarkable from nothing. "Camden." Bentley appeared at our side, a tall man with sandy hair and an easy smile. He clapped my husband on the back. "There's the man of the hour. Vicky, you look stunning as always." Zayden and Messiah joined us moments later. Zayden was shorter and stockier, with intense brown eyes and calloused hands that spoke of his working-class background. Messiah was the intellectual of the group, always wearing wire-rimmed glasses and speaking in measured tones about market trends and business strategy. "The whole office is buzzing about your announcement tonight," Messiah said, adjusting his glasses. "Word is you're getting the corner office on the 20th floor." Camden's chest puffed with pride. "Well, I can't confirm or deny anything yet, but let's just say all that hard work is about to pay off." I smiled and nodded, playing my part. Inside, I wondered what announcement they were talking about. I hadn't authorized any promotions or office changes. Everything significant came through my hidden network of advisors and legal representatives. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Dinner is served." We found our table near the front of the room. Camden had insisted on the premier seating, wanting to be seen by everyone important. I sat beside him, making pleasant conversation with the other wives and partners, all of us playing our assigned roles in this theater of corporate success. But then I saw her. Jasmine walked into the ballroom like she owned it. Tall and willowy with auburn hair that caught the light, she wore a red dress that left little to the imagination. She was beautiful in that dangerous way that made men forget their vows and women question their worth. Camden's entire body went rigid beside me. "Who's that?" I asked, though I already knew. "Jasmine Rivers," Bentley answered before Camden could speak. "She's our new marketing director. Came on board about 4 months ago." 4 months. Right around the time Camden started working late and buying new cologne. Jasmine scanned the room and her eyes locked with Camden's. He smiled. Slow, secretive, intimate. The kind of smile that spoke of shared secrets and stolen moments. My husband's face flushed, but he couldn't look away. Neither could I. She walked over to our table with confident strides, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown to disaster. "Good evening, everyone," she said, her voice husky and warm. "Camden, you look very handsome tonight." The words were innocent enough, but the way she said them, the way she looked at him, made them feel like a caress. Every wife at the table recognized the threat she represented. The men just saw a beautiful woman paying their friend a compliment. "Jasmine, this is my wife Vicky," Camden said, his voice slightly strained. She extended a perfectly manicured hand. "I've heard so much about you. Camden talks about you constantly." "I'll bet he does," I thought, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident, challenging. This wasn't a woman who backed down from anything she wanted. "All good things, I hope," I replied, matching her smile. "Oh, absolutely. He's always going on about how supportive you are, how you understand his dedication to work." Her eyes glittered with amusement. "It must be so nice to have a husband who's so committed to his job." The double meaning hit like a slap. Camden shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing. His friends seemed oblivious to the undercurrent of tension, too focused on Jasmine's beauty to notice the knife she was sliding between my ribs. Dinner was served, prime rib and lobster, the best the hotel had to offer. I barely tasted it. My attention was fixed on the interplay between Camden and Jasmine. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. The way her hand lingered on his arm when she leaned in to whisper something. The way he laughed at her jokes a little too loudly, a little too long. By the time dessert arrived, I felt sick. Not from the food, but from the truth that was becoming impossible to ignore. My husband was having an affair, and he was flaunting it in front of me at his own company party. "Attention, everyone. The company's master of ceremonies took the stage. "It's time for our special announcements." Camden straightened in his chair, adjusting his tie. This was his moment, his time to shine in front of everyone who mattered. He had no idea that his moment was about to become his downfall. "First, I'd like to congratulate our CEO, Camden Tatum, on another record-breaking year." Applause filled the room. Camden stood and waved, basking in the adoration. I clapped politely, my hands feeling heavy as lead. "And now for our special surprise of the evening. Camden, could you join me on stage?" My husband practically floated to the podium, his smile broad and confident. He shook hands with the MC and took the microphone. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began. "When I started this company 3 years ago, I had a vision. I wanted to build something that would change the industry, something that would make a real difference. Started this company. My money, my vision, my difference. But I sat silently, smile frozen on my face. I couldn't have done any of this without the support of amazing people. My team, my friends, and most importantly..." He looked right at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to acknowledge my role, my sacrifice, my love. "My incredible wife, Vicky, who has stood by me through everything." More applause. I waved, feeling like a fraud. But tonight isn't just about celebrating the past. It's about looking toward the future. And I'm excited to announce some major changes coming to our company structure. Changes? I felt a chill run down my spine. I hadn't authorized any structural changes. Effective immediately, I'm promoting myself to chairman of the board, and I'm pleased to announce our new CEO. No. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Please welcome to the stage our new Chief Executive Officer, Jasmine Rivers. The room erupted in applause as Jasmine sauntered onto the stage in her red dress. She kissed Camden's cheek, lingering a moment too long, and took the microphone. "Thank you all so much," she purred. "I'm thrilled to be taking on this new role. Camden and I have been working very closely together to ensure this transition goes smoothly." Working very closely together. The words echoed in my head as the reality of what was happening hit me. This wasn't just an affair. This was a coup. Camden was trying to push me out of my own company, replace me with his mistress, and he was doing it publicly, humiliatingly, in front of everyone. But he had made one crucial mistake. He still didn't know who really owned everything. I sat frozen in my chair, watching my husband and his lover accept congratulations from a crowd that included my own employees. Bentley, Zayden, and Messiah were cheering loudly, oblivious to the betrayal happening right in front of them. When Camden and Jasmine returned to the table, they were glowing with triumph. She sat down in the chair that had been empty beside him, effectively pushing me out of the conversation as everyone congratulated them on their new partnership. "This calls for champagne," Bentley declared, signaling for a waiter. As the Dom Perignon flowed, I watched Camden's hand rest on Jasmine's thigh under the table. I watched them exchange meaningful glances. I watched my husband celebrate his betrayal with the very money I had provided. That's when the rage started building. Cold, calculated, unstoppable rage. "Excuse me," I said, standing from the table. "I need to powder my nose." Camden barely looked at me. He was too busy whispering something in Jasmine's ear that made her laugh like wind chimes. I made my way to the restroom on unsteady legs. In the mirror, I looked pale and shaken, like a woman who'd just watched her world crumble. Which I supposed I had. But as I stared at my reflection, something shifted. The shock gave way to clarity. The hurt transformed into cold, hard purpose. Camden thought he was so clever, so smooth. He thought he could steal my company, humiliate me publicly, and ride off into the sunset with his beautiful new CEO. He had no idea who he was dealing with. I touched up my lipstick with steady hands and returned to the party. The evening continued with dancing and networking. Camden made sure to dance with Jasmine multiple times, holding her close, whispering in her ear, making sure everyone could see how intimate they were. I danced with Bentley, with Zayden, with Messiah. I smiled and made small talk and played the role of the supportive wife who was thrilled about these exciting new developments. Inside I was planning. As the evening wound down, Camden was drunk on champagne and victory. Jasmine hung on his arm like a trophy, her red dress a beacon of conquest. His friends surrounded them, offering congratulations and talking excitedly about the future of the company. That's when Camden decided to make his final move. "You know what, guys?" he said, his words slightly slurred. "I think it's time I was completely honest about something. The group fell silent, sensing drama. "Vicky," he called out, beckoning me over with a crooked finger. "Come here, honey." I approached slowly, every instinct telling me this was about to get worse. Camden put his arm around my waist, but not in a loving way. His grip was possessive, controlling, designed to keep me in place for what came next. "I want everyone to know that my wife has been, how should I put this, more of a hindrance than a help lately." Nervous laughter rippled through the group. Jasmine's eyes glittered with malicious delight. "I mean, she's beautiful, don't get me wrong," Camden continued, his voice getting louder. "But she doesn't understand business. She doesn't understand what it takes to succeed in this world. She's been holding me back with her constant questions and concerns about every little decision." My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I stayed silent. Let him dig his grave deeper. That's why I need someone like Jasmine beside me. Someone who understands vision, who understands sacrifice, who understands what it means to build something great. He pulled Jasmine closer with his free arm, sandwiching me between his betrayal and his cruelty. "So here's to new beginnings," he raised his champagne glass. "To leaving behind the dead weight and embracing the future." That's when he did it. In front of his friends, in front of Jasmine, in front of half the company, Camden Tatum drew back his foot and kicked me in the ribs. The impact sent me stumbling backward, gasping in pain and shock. The sound of his shoe connecting with my body was audible in the sudden silence that fell over our little group. "Whoops," Camden laughed, not even pretending it was an accident. "Looks like you're in the way again, honey." Bentley, Zayden, and Messiah stared in shock. Even they hadn't expected this level of cruelty. But Jasmine? Jasmine smiled like she'd just witnessed a beautiful sunset. I pressed my hand to my ribs, feeling the fire of pain spread through my torso. Tears of humiliation and rage burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "You're right, Camden," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "I have been in the way. But not anymore." I turned and walked away from the group, away from the party, away from the husband who had just shown me exactly who he really was. Behind me, I could hear nervous laughter and excited chatter as Camden and his friends returned to their celebration. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. The limousine ride home was silent except for Camden's occasional drunken laughter as he texted someone, undoubtedly Jasmine. I sat as far from him as possible, my ribs aching with every bump in the road. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional devastation, but both served to fuel the cold fire building in my chest. "You know," Camden slurred as we pulled into our driveway, "tonight went better than I could have imagined. Jasmine was incredible up there, wasn't she? So professional, so competent. Nothing like your wife?" I finished for him. He laughed. "Well, you said it, not me." The limo stopped at our front gate. Camden fumbled with his wallet to tip the driver, and I used the moment to slip out of the car and walk quickly to the house. My hands shook as I unlocked the front door, but not from fear, from anticipation. Camden stumbled up the walkway behind me, still chuckling to himself about his triumph. He had no idea he'd just walked into checkmate. "Vicky," he called as I disappeared inside. "Where are you going? The night's still young. I thought we could celebrate properly, you know? Maybe call Jasmine Ann." I slammed the door in his face and turned the deadbolt. "Vicky." His voice was muffled through the thick oak door. "What are you doing? Open up." I didn't respond. Instead, I walked calmly through my house that I owned completely, and out the back door to the security panel hidden behind the garden shed. With steady fingers, I entered the code that activated the electronic gate locks. The soft beep confirmed that Camden was now locked out of his own property. Or rather, locked out of my property. Back inside, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, listening to Camden's increasingly frustrated attempts to get my attention. "Vicky, come on, this isn't funny. Open the goddamn gate." I sipped my wine and began making phone calls. The first call was to my lawyer, Jazeel Mills. Despite the late hour, he answered on the second ring. He'd been my grandmother's attorney before mine, and he understood the importance of midnight emergencies when you controlled assets worth hundreds of millions. "Vicky, what can I do for you?" Jazeel, I need you to freeze all accounts associated with Camden Tatum effective immediately. Personal and business. Everything. May I ask why? I touched my ribs gingerly. Let's just say our marriage has taken an unexpected turn. How quickly can you make this happen? I can have preliminary freezes in place within the hour. Full documentation by morning. Are you safe? I'm fine. Just disappointed in my choice of husband. I'll take care of everything. Do you want me to initiate divorce proceedings as well? Not yet. I want to see how this plays out first. The second call was to my security company. Within 30 minutes they would change every lock on every door, reset all security codes and install additional cameras. Camden's keys and codes would be worthless. The third call was to my private investigator, someone I'd hired 3 months ago when I first suspected Camden's infidelity. Margaret Stone had been gathering evidence ever since. Margaret, it's Vicky. I need everything you have on Camden and Jasmine Rivers. Photos, recordings, documentation. Everything. I've got plenty, Margaret's gravelly voice confirmed. Hotel receipts, credit card statements, some very intimate photographs. When do you need it? Tomorrow morning. I'm going to the office early. I'll have it couriered to your house by 7 a.m. Outside, Camden was still banging on the gate, his voice growing more angry and desperate. Vicky, this is insane. Let me in. It's my house too. Actually, it wasn't. The deed was in my name only. Another romantic gesture I'd made during our engagement, wanting him to feel secure and loved. Now it was the first weapon in my arsenal. I finished my wine and went upstairs to our bedroom. Camden's clothes still hung in the closet, his cologne still sat on the bathroom counter, his presence still lingered in every corner. By tomorrow night all of that would be gone. I changed into comfortable pajamas and looked out the bedroom window. Camden had given up on the gate and was now sitting in his BMW in the driveway, talking angrily on his phone. Probably calling Bentley or one of his other friends, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. Let him wonder. I took a long hot bath, letting the warm water soothe my bruised ribs. The physical evidence of Camden's betrayal would fade, but the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. Still, as I soaked in the tub, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Power. For too long, I'd been the silent partner, the hidden supporter, the woman behind the man. Tomorrow, Camden would learn exactly who held the real power in his carefully constructed world. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. I woke at 6 a.m. to the sound of Camden honking his car horn and shouting obscenities at my bedroom window. He'd spent the entire night in his BMW, and judging by his appearance when I peeked through the curtains, it hadn't been comfortable. His tuxedo was wrinkled and stained, his hair disheveled, his face red with anger and exhaustion. He looked like a man whose world was falling apart, which was exactly what was happening. Margaret's courier arrived at 7 sharp with a thick manila envelope. Inside were dozens of photographs documenting Camden's affair. Him and Jasmine entering hotels, kissing in his office, sharing intimate dinners at expensive restaurants I'd unknowingly paid for. There were also financial records showing how Camden had been using company funds to wine and dine his mistress, charging everything from jewelry to weekend getaways to the business accounts. The irony was delicious. He'd been using my money to cheat on me. I dressed carefully for the office in a sharp black suit that commanded respect and authority. My ribs still ached, but I moved with purpose and determination. Today was the day Camden Tatum learned who he'd really been married to. At 8 a.m. I drove out of my garage using the back exit, leaving Camden still sitting in his car by the front gate. He probably assumed I was trapped inside, probably thought his tantrum would eventually wear me down. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The headquarters of Tatum Industries occupied a gleaming 40-story building in the heart of downtown. Camden believed he'd built this empire through his brilliant leadership and innovative vision. The truth was I'd purchased the building through a shell company, funded the initial operations through carefully disguised investments, and maintained control through a complex web of holding companies that all traced back to my grandmother's trust. Camden thought he was the king of his castle. He was actually just a well-paid actor playing a role I'd written for him. I arrived at the office before most of the staff, using my private elevator to reach the executive floor. The security guard, a kind older man named Frank, tipped his hat respectfully. "Morning, Mrs. Tatum. You're here early today." "Big day ahead, Frank." Is the conference room set up? Yes, ma'am. Everything's ready for your meeting. Camden had no idea that Frank and several other key personnel reported directly to me through confidential channels. He saw them as his employees, but their real loyalty lay elsewhere. I settled into the conference room and began making calls. The first was to the company's CFO, Thomas Wright, who managed the public-facing finances while taking direction from my private financial team. Thomas, I need you to prepare immediate documentation transferring all executive authority from Camden Tatum to someone else. Who's our most competent department head? Rachel Zander in operations has been doing exceptional work. She's been essentially running day-to-day operations while Camden focuses on other things. Perfect. Draft the paperwork making Rachel interim CO. I want it ready within the hour. And Camden is about to discover that his position was never as secure as he believed. Next, I called Jazeel to confirm that Camden's accounts had been frozen. The process was complete. Every credit card, every bank account, every line of credit associated with his name was now locked down tight. He's going to be very unhappy when he finds out, Jazeel warned. I'm counting on it. By 9 a.m., word had spread through the office that something unusual was happening. Employees gathered in small groups, whispering about the early morning management shuffle. Camden's friends, Bentley, Zayden, and Messiah, arrived to find security guards waiting to escort them to the conference room. What's going on? Bentley asked, his easy smile fading as he took in the serious faces around him. Please have a seat, gentlemen, I said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. We need to discuss some changes to the company structure. Zayden frowned. Where's Camden? Shouldn't he be handling this? Camden is indisposed at the moment. That's actually what we need to talk about. I opened the manila envelope and spread the photographs across the conference table. Images of Camden and Jasmine in compromising positions, receipts for expensive gifts and hotel rooms, documentation of unauthorized use of company funds. The three men stared in shock at the evidence of their friend's betrayal, not just of me but of the company's financial integrity. These expenses, I continued, pointing to the receipts, represent approximately $200,000 in unauthorized personal charges to business accounts. Under normal circumstances, this would constitute embezzlement. Messiah picked up one of the hotel receipts, his face pale. Camden was using company money for this? Among other things, the jewelry alone cost more than most employees make in a year. But he's the CEO, Zayden protested weakly. He can authorize expenses. Actually, he can't. Not without board approval for personal expenses, and certainly not for conducting an extramarital affair on company time using company resources. Bentley was staring at a photograph of Camden and Jasmine kissing in what appeared to be the executive office. I can't believe he would do this to you, Vicky. We had no idea. I know you didn't. That's why you're not in trouble. But Camden is, and anyone who continues to support his unauthorized actions will be as well. The door opened and Rachel Zander entered, looking professional and composed in a navy blue suit. She was a competent woman in her 40s who'd been overlooked for promotions because Camden preferred to surround himself with male friends and attractive women like Jasmine. Gentlemen, I said, I'd like you to meet your new interim CEO, Rachel Zander. She'll be taking over all of Camden's responsibilities effective immediately. The three men looked stunned. Bentley found his voice first. You can't just. Who authorized this? Where's the board of directors? I smiled coldly. The board authorized it. Unanimously. What they didn't know was that I controlled the board through proxy votes and shell companies. The unanimous decision had taken exactly as long as it took me to sign the paperwork. But Camden will never accept this, Messiah said. He'll fight it. Camden will accept whatever he's told to accept. Now you gentlemen have a choice to make. You can support the new management structure and continue your careers here, or you can stand with Camden and face the consequences of supporting someone who's embezzled company funds to conduct an affair. The room fell silent as they processed this information. These weren't bad men, just loyal friends who'd been blind to their buddies' faults. But they weren't stupid and they could see which way the wind was blowing. We'll support the new structure, Bentley said quietly, speaking for all three. We had no idea about any of this. Good. Rachel will fill you in on the new reporting structure. I believe you'll find working under competent leadership much more rewarding than enabling someone's midlife crisis. As the meeting concluded, my phone rang. Camden's name appeared on the screen, and I could practically feel his desperation through the device. I answered with a cheerful voice. "Good morning, Camden. How was your night?" "You crazy bitch," he screamed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What the hell did you do to my accounts? My credit cards aren't working. The bank says everything's been frozen." "Oh, that. Yes, there's been some concern about unauthorized financial activity. Nothing to worry about, I'm sure it will all get sorted out." "Sorted out? You're the one who did this. I know it was you. Open the goddamn gate and let me into my house." "Actually, Camden, it's my house. The deed is in my name, remember? That romantic gesture you found so touching 3 years ago." The silence on the other end was deafening. "You're insane," he finally whispered. "You can't do this." "I'm afraid I can. You see, I've discovered some very troubling financial irregularities in the company books. Unauthorized personal expenses, misuse of corporate resources, that sort of thing. I'm sure it's all a misunderstanding, but until we get to the bottom of it, I'm coming to the office. We're going to settle this right now. I'm sure Rachel will be happy to speak with you. Though you should know that security has been instructed not to allow unauthorized personnel into the building." "Unauthorized personnel? I'm the CEO. Actually, Rachel Zander is the CEO now. You've been relieved of your duties pending the investigation into financial improprieties. Have a wonderful day, Camden." I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, the security desk called to inform me that Camden had arrived and was making quite a scene in the lobby. I told them to send him up. I wanted to see his face when he realized how completely his world had changed. Camden burst into the conference room like a hurricane, still wearing his wrinkled tuxedo from the night before. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot, and he smelled like he'd been drinking all night and sleeping in his car. Which, of course, he had. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he roared, slamming his hands on the conference table. I remained seated, calm and composed. "I'm protecting the company from someone who's been embezzling funds to support his extramarital affair. Please sit down." "You look terrible." "I'm not sitting down. You can't lock me out of my own house. You can't freeze my accounts. You can't take away my company. Your house. Your accounts. Your company." I stood slowly, letting the full weight of the truth settle over him. "Camden, darling, you never owned any of it. Not the house, not the company, not the accounts. Everything you thought was yours actually belongs to me." His face went white. "That's impossible." "Is it? Think back, sweetheart. Where did the startup capital come from when you began this company? Who paid for the office space, the equipment, the initial staff? Who's been quietly covering the shortfalls when your brilliant management failed to generate enough revenue?" Camden's legs gave out and he collapsed into a chair. The magnitude of his situation was finally dawning on him. "You've been playing house with my money, Camden. Every success you claimed, every achievement you celebrated, every moment of pride and accomplishment, all of it was purchased with my inheritance. You're not a self-made man. You're a kept man who bit the hand that fed him. But the wedding contracts, the joint accounts, were all structured to protect my assets while giving you the illusion of control. My lawyers are very good at what they do." Camden stared at me in horror. "You've been lying to me for 3 years. I've been protecting you for 3 years. I let you believe you were successful because I wanted you to feel good about yourself, because I loved you and wanted our marriage to work. But last night, when you kicked me in front of your friends and your mistress, when you humiliated me publicly while announcing your plan to replace me with another woman, that's when I decided it was time for you to learn the truth. I didn't mean to kick you. I was drunk, I was excited, You meant every word you said and every action you took. You called me dead weight, Camden. You said I was holding you back. You physically assaulted me in front of people and then laughed about it. That wasn't the alcohol talking, that was the real you finally showing itself." Camden's face crumbled. "Vicky, please, I'm sorry. I was drunk, I was stupid. Jasmine means nothing to me. She's just the woman you've been sleeping with for 4 months, using my money to pay for hotel rooms and expensive gifts. She's just the woman you promoted to CEO of my company without my authorization. She's just the woman you planned to leave me for." The door opened and security guards entered. I'd called them while Camden was processing his new reality. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Tatum from the building. He's no longer authorized to be here. You can't do this. Camden screamed as the guards approached. I'll sue you. I'll destroy you. You can't steal my life. Your life was never yours to begin with, I said calmly. And if you want to discuss lawsuits, we should talk about the embezzlement charges you're facing. The guards took Camden by the arms and he went limp with defeat. As they dragged him toward the door, he looked back at me with a mixture of rage and desperation. This isn't over, Vicky. You'll pay for this. No, Camden. You're the one who's going to pay. For 3 years of lies, for the affair, for the humiliation, and for thinking you could steal everything I've built. The bill is coming due. After Camden was removed, I sat alone in the conference room for several minutes, letting the silence wash over me. Phase 1 was complete. My husband had learned that his entire life was built on foundations he'd never controlled. But this was just the beginning. I picked up my phone and called Margaret. It's time for Phase 2. The police arrived at my house at 3 o'clock that afternoon, just as I was returning from a very productive day at the office. 2 officers stood on my front porch with Camden beside them, his rumpled tuxedo now replaced with wrinkled jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better days. Camden's face lit up with vindictive triumph when he saw me step out of my car. There she is, officers. The woman who illegally locked me out of my own home and froze my bank accounts. Officer Xander, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped forward. Ma'am, we've received a complaint about a domestic dispute. Your husband claims you've illegally denied him access to his residence and his financial accounts. I smiled politely and reached into my purse. Of course, officers. I have all the documentation right here. Camden's smugness wavered as I pulled out a manila folder. This is the deed to the house, showing sole ownership under my name. These are the bank account statements showing all accounts are held in my name alone. And this is a restraining order I filed this morning due to threatening behavior. Officer Xander examined the papers carefully while her partner kept a watchful eye on Camden. As she read, Camden's face grew increasingly pale. I don't understand, he stammered. We're married. We bought this house together. Those are joint accounts. Actually, sir, Officer Xander said, looking up from the documents, according to these legal records, Mrs. Tatum is the sole owner of this property. And I'm seeing here that she filed a restraining order this morning citing verbal threats and physical assault. Physical assault? Camden's voice cracked. I never. You kicked me in the ribs last night at the company party. I said quietly, unbuttoning my blouse just enough to show the edge of the purple bruise that had bloomed across my ribcage. In front of witnesses. The officers exchanged glances. Officer Xander handed the papers back to me. Ma'am, you have every right to deny access to your property, especially with a valid restraining order. Sir, you need to find somewhere else to stay. If you violate this restraining order, you'll be arrested. Camden stared at me in disbelief. You're destroying my life. No, Camden. I'm simply stopping you from destroying mine. As the police car pulled away, Camden stood alone in my driveway looking lost and defeated. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of his laughter when he kicked me, the way Jasmine had smiled at my humiliation, the years of lies and deception. My sympathy evaporated like morning mist. Inside my house, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Jaziel. The police visit went perfectly. Camden is officially homeless and learning that the law doesn't care about his feelings. Good. I've also processed the business account freezes. All of Tatum Industries' financial assets are now under your direct control pending the embezzlement investigation. How long before Camden realizes the full scope of what's happening? I'd say about 24 hours. Once word spreads through the business community that he's been stripped of all authority and is under investigation for financial misconduct, his reputation will be in ruins. Perfect. What about Jasmine Rivers? Ah yes. I've done some digging on Ms. Rivers. Very interesting background. She's been involved in several similar situations, targeting married executives, becoming their mistress, then positioning herself for promotion or financial gain. This is her pattern. So Camden isn't her first victim? Not by a long shot. He's quite the professional homewrecker. I have documentation on at least 3 previous cases where she broke up marriages for financial gain. The irony was delicious. Camden thought he'd found true love, but he'd actually fallen for a woman who made a career out of seducing and manipulating married men. He wasn't special, he was just another Mark. That evening I sat in my living room with a good book and a better bottle of wine, enjoying the peace and quiet of my Camden-free home. Around 9 o'clock my security cameras picked up movement in the driveway. I switched to the live feed and saw Camden stumbling around my property, clearly drunk and increasingly agitated. He was talking to himself, gesticulating wildly, occasionally kicking at the gate or throwing rocks at my windows. I called the police. 911, what's your emergency? This is Vicky Tatum at 247 Hillcrest Drive. My estranged husband is violating his restraining order by trespassing on my property while intoxicated. The police arrived within 10 minutes to find Camden passed out on my front lawn. They arrested him for violating the restraining order and public intoxication. As they loaded him into the patrol car, he looked up at my bedroom window with such hatred that it sent a chill down my spine. But I wasn't afraid. I was exhilarated. The next morning brought fresh developments. Rachel called to inform me that Jasmine had stormed into the office demanding to speak with Camden, only to discover that he'd been permanently banned from the building. She was furious, Rachel reported. Started screaming about conspiracies and illegal takeovers. Security had to escort her out as well. Has she figured out that her promotion was never legitimate? I think she's starting to realize that whatever promises Camden made to her, he had no authority to keep them. She's been calling his phone all morning, but since he's in jail. Perfect. Let her sweat for a while. Has the staff adjusted to the new management structure? Better than expected. Honestly, Vicky, I think people are relieved. Camden had become increasingly erratic over the past few months. His affair wasn't as secret as he thought. Most people suspected something was going on. That afternoon, Camden made bail and immediately called me. His voice was hoarse and desperate. Vicky, please, we need to talk. I spent the night in jail because of you. This has gone far enough. Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, we're just getting started. What do you want? Money. I'll pay you back every penny of whatever you think I owe you. Just stop this madness. What I want is for you to understand exactly what you threw away. What I want is for you to realize that every moment of happiness you experienced in our marriage was a gift I gave you, and you repaid me with betrayal and humiliation. I get it, okay? I screwed up. I made mistakes. But destroying my entire life isn't going to make you feel better. Actually, Camden, it already is. That evening I decided to take a drive. I found myself parking across the street from a modest apartment complex where my private investigator had tracked Camden's current location. Through the thin walls I could hear raised voices. Camden and Jasmine were having a spectacular fight. You promised me I'd be safe. Jasmine screamed. You said we'd run the company together. I thought I could. How was I supposed to know that Vicky controlled everything? She lied to me for 3 years. So what happens now? I quit my last job for this opportunity. I turned down other offers because you convinced me we had a future together. We do have a future. This is just a setback. I'll figure something out. With what money, Camden? Your accounts are frozen, you're homeless, and you can't even get into your own office building. I smiled in my car, listening to their relationship crumble under the weight of reality. Jasmine hadn't fallen in love with Camden. She'd fallen in love with the lifestyle she thought he could provide. Now that the money was gone, her true feelings were showing. The fight continued for another hour before Jasmine stormed out of the apartment and drove away in her red Porsche, probably a gift from Camden using my money. Through the window, I could see Camden sitting alone in the dingy furnished apartment, his head in his hands. For 3 years he'd lived like a king in my castle. Now he was finding out what his actual worth was in the real world. 2 weeks passed in relative quiet. Camden made several attempts to contact me, alternating between tearful apologies and angry threats. I ignored them all. Jasmine, meanwhile, had apparently decided to cut her losses and move to another city, leaving Camden to face his consequences alone. The business world was abuzz with gossip about Camden's spectacular fall from grace. The story had everything: sex, betrayal, financial misconduct, and a powerful woman's revenge. I became something of a minor celebrity in certain circles, the scorned wife who turned out to be the real power behind the throne. But I wasn't done yet. Giselle called with news that made my day. The IRS has launched a formal investigation into Camden's tax returns. Apparently, he's been claiming personal expenses as business deductions for years. How much trouble is he in? Potentially several years in federal prison and hundreds of thousands in fines and back taxes. The man has been living beyond his means for so long, he forgot that the means weren't actually his. That afternoon, as I was leaving a lunch meeting downtown, I spotted a familiar figure across the street. Camden was standing outside a pawn shop, apparently having just sold something valuable. He looked terrible, unshaven, wearing rumpled clothes, walking with the defeated posture of a man who'd lost everything. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy. This was the man I'd loved, the man I'd planned to spend my life with. Seeing him reduced to pawning his possessions for cash was genuinely painful. But then I remembered the sound of his shoe connecting with my ribs, the laughter that followed, the way he'd held Jasmine while calling me dead weight. The sympathy died as quickly as it had appeared. That evening, I was enjoying a quiet dinner at home when my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. I opened the door with the chain still engaged. "Can I help you? Mrs. Tatum? My name is Barbara Rivers. Jasmine Rivers is my daughter." My blood ran cold. I unhooked the chain and opened the door fully. "Please come in." Barbara Rivers was an elegant woman who reminded me of my own mother. Sophisticated, intelligent, and clearly not someone to be trifled with. She accepted my offer of coffee and settled into my living room with the confidence of someone who owned the space. "I imagine you're wondering why I'm here," she began. The thought had crossed my mind. "My daughter has a pattern. She targets successful married men, seduces them, destroys their marriages, and moves on to the next victim. You're not the first wife she's devastated, and unfortunately, you probably won't be the last." I leaned back in my chair, studying this unexpected visitor. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm tired of cleaning up her messes. And because what happened to you was particularly cruel, even by Jasmine's standards." Barbara's eyes hardened. "I saw the video." "What video?" Barbara pulled out her phone and showed me footage that made my stomach lurch. It was security camera footage from the hotel gala, showing Camden kicking me while Jasmine laughed and encouraged him. Someone had recorded the whole humiliating incident. "Jasmine posted this on her private social media accounts," Barbara explained. "She was bragging to her friends about how she'd helped put me in my place. She thought it was hilarious." Rage flooded through me like molten lava. Bad enough that Camden had humiliated me, but knowing that Jasmine had recorded and shared my degradation for entertainment made it infinitely worse. "I've spent years trying to get Jasmine help, trying to understand why she enjoys destroying families," Barbara continued. "But I've finally accepted that some people are simply cruel. What I can do is warn her potential future victims and help her current victims get justice." "What kind of help are you offering?" Barbara smiled grimly. "The kind that ensures Jasmine faces consequences for her actions. I have documentation of all her previous schemes, testimony from other wives she's destroyed, financial records showing the pattern of her behavior. Everything you'd need to file both civil and criminal charges against her." I stared at the woman across from me. "Why would you help destroy your own daughter?" "Because someone has to stop her before she destroys another family. And because what she did to you, recording your humiliation, sharing it for laughs, that crossed a line even for her." We talked for another 2 hours. By the time Barbara left, I had enough evidence to not only destroy Jasmine's reputation but to potentially send her to prison for fraud, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges related to her pattern of targeting married men. But first I had one more surprise for Camden. The next morning I drove to Camden's dingy apartment complex. I knew he'd be desperate to see me. His calls and text had become increasingly frantic as his situation grew more dire. I knocked on his door at exactly 9 a.m. Camden answered in his underwear, clearly having just woken up. When he saw me standing there, his face cycled through shock, hope, and desperate relief. "Vicky, thank God you're here. I've been going crazy trying to reach you. We need to talk, we need to fix this." "We do need to talk," I agreed, stepping into his pathetic little apartment. The place smelled like stale beer and desperation. Empty pizza boxes and dirty clothes were scattered everywhere. This was what Camden's life looked like without my money propping it up. "I know you're angry," he began, "and you have every right to be." I was an idiot, I was selfish, I threw away the best thing in my life for a woman who didn't even care about me. Oh, I know Jasmine didn't care about you. I've learned quite a lot about her patterns and motivations. Camden's face brightened with pathetic hope. Then you understand. She manipulated me, seduced me, made me think I was something special. But I see the truth now. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video Barbara had given me, him kicking me while Jasmine laughed, and recorded it all. Camden's face went white as he watched his moment of cruelest betrayal played back in high definition. Where did you get this? Jasmine's mother. Apparently, your girlfriend was so proud of helping you humiliate me that she shared the video with her friends as entertainment. Camden sat down heavily on his unmade bed. I didn't know she was recording. I didn't know she was going to share it. But you knew you were kicking your wife in front of an audience. You knew you were calling me dead weight while holding another woman. You knew you were destroying our marriage for the entertainment of your friends. I was drunk, I was stupid. You were cruel. And the fact that Jasmine found it amusing enough to record and share just proves that you both deserve each other. Camden looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Please, Vicky. I'll do anything to make this right. I'll get help, I'll cut all contact with Jasmine, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. For a moment I almost believed he meant it. Almost felt sorry for the broken man sitting before me in his dingy apartment, facing bankruptcy and criminal charges. Almost. There is something you can do for me, Camden. Anything. Just name it. I pulled out a document from my purse. Divorce papers that would give me everything while leaving Camden with nothing but his debts and legal troubles. Sign these. Camden looked at the papers with growing horror. This gives you everything. The house, the company, all the assets. It leaves me with nothing. It leaves you with exactly what you brought to our marriage. Nothing. I can't sign this. It would destroy me completely. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. Then don't. Fight me in court. Try to claim half of assets you never owned, half of a company you never built, half of a fortune you never earned. See how that works out for you when the IRS investigation concludes, when the embezzlement charges are filed, when Jasmine's previous victims come forward to testify about her pattern of seducing and manipulating married men. Camden's hands shook as he held the papers. You're not the woman I married. You're right. The woman you married was naive and trusting. She believed in love and partnership and the sanctity of marriage vows. That woman died the night you kicked her in front of your mistress and called her dead weight. I walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at him one final time. The woman standing here now is someone who learned that power without respect is meaningless, that love without loyalty is worthless, and that sometimes the only way to stop being a victim is to become something your enemies fear. I never wanted to be your enemy, Vicky. Then you shouldn't have made me yours. I left Camden sitting in his apartment with the divorce papers, knowing he had no choice but to sign them. His legal troubles were mounting, his money was gone, his reputation was in ruins. Fighting me would only make things worse for him. But I wasn't quite finished yet. 6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse office, looking out over the city I now dominated. Tatum Industries had been restructured and renamed Phoenix Enterprises, with me as the public face and CEO. Under Rachel's operational management and my strategic vision, the company had grown beyond anything Camden had ever imagined possible. The business world had embraced my story. I'd become a symbol of female empowerment, a woman who refused to be victimized and instead turned the tables on those who had wronged her. Speaking engagements, magazine covers, book deals. Opportunities flowed toward me like water finding its level. Camden had signed the divorce papers, of course. He'd had no choice. The IRS investigation had resulted in criminal charges for tax evasion, and he was currently serving 18 months in federal prison. His cell was probably smaller than the closet in our former bedroom. But the most satisfying justice had come for Jasmine. With Barbara Rivers' help, I'd built an airtight case against her for fraud, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges related to her pattern of targeting married men. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, testimony from previous victims, documentation of her systematic approach to seducing and manipulating wealthy husbands. The trial had been a sensation. Jasmine, dressed in a conservative suit that couldn't hide her true nature, had tried to play the victim. She claimed she was just a woman looking for love who'd been manipulated by the men she trusted. But the prosecution, funded quietly by me through intermediaries, had demolished her defense. Witness after witness testified about her calculated approach, her pattern of behavior, her complete lack of remorse for the families she'd destroyed. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. Jasmine was now serving 5 years in state prison, and her conviction had made national news. Several other wives had come forward with similar stories, and law enforcement was investigating her activities in multiple states. Barbara Rivers had thanked me personally. "You stopped her," she'd said simply. Finally, someone stopped her. But perhaps the most poetic justice was what had happened to Camden's 3 friends. Bentley, Zayden, and Messiah had all kept their jobs at Phoenix Enterprises, but their careers had stalled. They were competent employees, but their association with Camden's fraud and their failure to notice or report his misconduct had marked them as unreliable. They would never advance beyond their current positions. They'd learned that loyalty to the wrong person could be just as damaging as disloyalty to the right one. As I stood on my balcony, my assistant knocked on the door. "Miss Phoenix? Your 3 o'clock appointment is here." I'd legally changed my name back to my maiden name, Vicky Phoenix. It felt like a rebirth, a return to the woman I'd been before I'd lost myself in someone else's dreams. "Send them in, please." The door opened to admit a young woman who looked remarkably familiar. She was probably 25, with dark hair and frightened eyes. Behind her walked an older man in an expensive suit, clearly her lawyer. "Miss Phoenix," the lawyer began, "this is Miranda Victor. She's in a situation very similar to the one you faced with your ex-husband." I gestured for them to sit. "Tell me about it." Miranda's story was heartbreakingly familiar. A wealthy young woman who'd fallen in love with a charming man, funded his business ventures while staying in the background, only to discover he was cheating on her with multiple women while planning to divorce her and claim half of everything she owned. "I saw your story on the news," Miranda said quietly. "I saw how you fought back and won. I need to know, is it possible? Can someone like me really stand up to someone like him?" I smiled and reached for a legal pad. "Miranda, let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Power that's hidden is power that can be stolen. But power that's acknowledged, documented, and legally protected? That's power that can change the world. So you'll help me? I'll do more than help you. I'm going to teach you how to be the kind of woman who never needs help again." Over the next 2 hours, I outlined a strategy that would not only protect Miranda's assets but would expose her husband's infidelity and financial misconduct in ways that would destroy his reputation and end his ability to victimize other women. It felt good to use my hard-won knowledge for justice rather than just revenge. As Miranda and her lawyer left, I returned to my balcony. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere out there, Camden was sitting in his prison cell, probably wondering how his perfect life had crumbled so completely. Somewhere else, Jasmine was learning that actions have consequences and that victimizing others eventually catches up to you. And here I was, standing in the center of an empire I'd built from the ashes of my destroyed marriage, helping other women find their own strength and power. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, my heart stopped. Camden shouldn't have been able to contact me from prison. But the message wasn't from Camden. "Miss Phoenix, my name is Catherine Walsh. I read about your story in Miranda Victor's case. I think I need your help. My husband doesn't know that I own the pharmaceutical company he thinks he's running. He just announced his engagement to his secretary. Can we meet?" I smiled and typed back immediately. "My office tomorrow at 10 a.m. Bring all your financial records and proof of your husband's infidelity. Time to teach another man that there are consequences for betraying powerful women." As night fell over the city, I stood in my office surrounded by the empire I'd built from betrayal and emerged stronger than ever. Camden had thought he could break me, humiliate me, steal from me, and discard me. Instead, he'd created a monster far more dangerous than anything he could have imagined. I'd learned that the most satisfying revenge isn't just destroying your enemies. It's becoming so powerful that they become irrelevant. Camden would spend the rest of his life knowing that every success I achieved, every woman I helped, every victory I claimed, was built on the foundation of his betrayal. He'd wanted to leave me behind as dead weight. Instead, he'd freed me to become something magnificent and terrible and unstoppable. And this was just the beginning. 5 years later, I stood at the podium of the International Women's Business Conference, looking out at an audience of 2,000 powerful women from around the world. Behind me, a screen displayed the Phoenix Enterprises logo and the title of my keynote speech. From Victim to Victory: How Betrayal Can Become Your Greatest Strength. Ladies, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium, how many of you have been told you were too emotional, too weak, too naive to succeed in business? Hundreds of hands rose in the air. How many of you have been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Even more hands joined the first group. And how many of you used that betrayal as fuel to build something greater than anything your betrayer could have imagined? The applause was thunderous. Phoenix Enterprises now employed over 10,000 people across 15 countries. We specialized in acquisitions and restructuring, buying failing companies, exposing the corruption or incompetence that had led to their failures, and rebuilding them under competent leadership. But our real specialty was something the business press had dubbed Phoenix Justice, helping wealthy women who discovered their husbands were cheating, stealing, or planning to leave them for younger models. We provided legal support, financial strategy, and the kind of strategic planning that turned victims into victors. Camden had been released from prison 18 months ago. He now worked as a night security guard at a warehouse, living in a studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old Honda. He tried to contact me several times, offering apologies and begging for reconciliation. I'd ignored every attempt. He was no longer worthy of my attention, positive or negative. Jasmine had been released on parole after serving 3 years. She tried to rebuild her career under an assumed name, but the business world has a long memory for scandal. Last I'd heard, she was working as a bartender in a small town in Montana, her dreams of power and luxury permanently shattered. As for me, I'd never remarried. I'd had relationships, but I'd learned to value my independence too much to ever again put my fate in someone else's hands. I had power, wealth, purpose, and the satisfaction of knowing that I'd turned my greatest defeat into my most magnificent victory. The speech concluded with a standing ovation that lasted nearly 10 minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached me with their own stories of betrayal and their plans for justice. I listened to each one, offering advice, connections, and sometimes direct assistance. That evening, as I sat in my hotel suite overlooking the city, I received an unexpected phone call. Miss Phoenix? This is Officer Zander with the Metropolitan Police Department. We spoke several years ago about a domestic dispute involving your ex-husband. I remembered her, the kind-eyed police officer who'd handled Camden's attempt to have me arrested for locking him out of my own house. How can I help you, Officer Zander? I'm actually calling because I wanted to thank you. Your story inspired my daughter to leave an abusive relationship and start her own business. She's doing very well now. I'm glad to hear that. But I'm also calling to let you know that your ex-husband was arrested again last night. I felt a slight flutter of curiosity. What for? He tried to break into the offices of Phoenix Enterprises. Security cameras caught him attempting to jimmy a window on the ground floor. When we arrested him, he kept ranting about how you'd stolen his life and he was going to take back what was his. I shook my head. Even after 5 years, Camden still didn't understand that he'd never owned anything worth taking. Is he claiming mental health issues? His public defender is trying that angle, but the prosecution says it's just another case of an entitled man who can't accept the consequences of his actions. He'll probably get another year or 2 for attempted breaking and entering. After I hung up, I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, Camden was sitting in another jail cell, still believing he was the victim in our story. Still convinced that I'd somehow cheated him out of a life that had never been his to claim. He would never understand that the woman he'd married had given him everything freely out of love. And the woman he'd betrayed had taken it all back out of justice. I raised my glass of wine in a toast to the city, to my success, and to every woman who'd ever been told she wasn't strong enough to fight back. Here's to rising from the ashes, I said aloud. And here's to making sure the people who tried to burn you down never forget the flames they created. My revenge hadn't been what Camden expected. It hadn't been what anyone expected. It had been so much better.